Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 176 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on with you?
Hey, man. How you doing? I'm good.
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah. What, do you think I'd lie to you?
No.
Although I am getting a bit nervous. My daughter goes back to college.
Yeah.
And you know how I was this time last year. I don't know how it's going to affect me. Am I going to be melancholy? Am I going to be curled up in a ball? We'll have to wait and see.
You're probably curled in a ball, crying, weeping your eyes out.
And my youngest gets her temps in about 2 weeks. So yeah. I got some stuff I'm dealing with here.
I'll be crying for that because every time I come into your neighborhood, I'll be worried. Like,
yeah, you should be.
Is she out driving? Because
everybody, actually, she's a really good driver.
That's good.
I think it's all the Wii video games and the racing that we did.
She's learning.
She learned. All right, buddy. We got some amazing new support. So let's give some shout outs. We had Suzanne Muir.
Hey, Suzanne.
Barbara Williams.
What's going on, Barbara?
Yvonne Lanzot.
What's going on, Lanzot?
Jude Coggins.
Hey, Jude.
Morgan Ramos.
You know, I wanted to say that song, Hey Jude.
Hey, you wanted to say it or sing it?
Well, I was going to sing it, but I didn't want to ruin it.
Sing it.
Yeah. Hey, Morgan.
Paulina Lano.
What's going on, Paulino?
William Wallace.
William Wallace. And just something about freedom.
Just something about
freedom.
You can never take away our freedom.
Yeah.
We had India McCooey.
Hey, McCooey.
Lisa R.
What's going on, Lisa?
Lori Dean.
Well, hey, Lori.
Aaron Gordon.
What's up, Aaron?
Mazzy Kist.
Masochist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Marla Roby.
What's going on, Roby?
Lindsay Crowding.
Hey, Lindsay.
Erica Carter.
Thank you, Erica.
Vicky.
Just Vicky.
All
right.
Button 606606.
Probably related to Jenny 8360 whatever. Remember that song?
8675309. How can you not remember that?
I don't know. I forgot it.
And then you just make up a bunch of random numbers.
Yeah.
But you're so confident with it. That's what gets me.
That's the
like you're making these numbers up, but everybody's just going to believe you're right.
Somebody out there said, you know what? He's correct.
I'll get an email saying you're wrong. Gibby's right.
Yeah.
We had Jed Patton.
Hey, Jed.
Sarah Blickham.
Hey, what's going on, Blickham?
Charles Telk III.
Hey, Charles.
Nady K.
What's up, Nady?
Laverne Smith Sanford.
Hey, Laverne.
And Robert Crawford.
Well, thank you, Robert.
So thank you all for that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Lisa Davies.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
And then we had some PayPal donations as well. Laura McConaughey.
Hey, Lori.
Daniel Javier. Jillian Jager.
Hey, Jager.
And Kate Massey.
Well, thank you, Kate.
So thank all of you. Gibbs, right now we have a brand new episode out on TCAT. We're talking about Matthew Macon going to Lansing, Michigan. This guy murdered 7 women over a number of years, but 5 in a short span in the summer of 2007. This case interested me for a number of reasons. There's some twists, turns. There's a wrongful conviction. There are aspects of the case that potentially let this guy keep murdering when he shouldn't have been able to. Right. So those are kind of the things that grab me.
He was so brutal, though.
And he was a very brutal killer. Did a lot of stabbing, but he also did a lot of literally beating people to death.
Yeah.
With objects and he was just a brutal guy. But make sure you check that out. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're talking about the unsolved murders of the Pasco County Four. This series of unsolved murders occurred in Pasco County, Florida between 1973 and 1977, and then suddenly stopped. 3 of the 4 victims had a direct link to the clubs on the Dale Mabry Strip in the heart of Tampa, just outside of the Pasco County limits. The Dale Mabry Strip during the 70s was famous for having an abundance of nude strip clubs, X-rated movie theaters, and adult bookstores along about a mile-long stretch.
was the place to be if you were into that.
Okay. And I'm sure you visited there more than once. But one of the things, Gibbs, that all these four women had in common was that they were known to frequently either walk or hitchhike. And you and I have talked about hitchhiking in a number of episodes, how dangerous it can be. Not a lot of hitchhiking going on in 2020.
No, with this COVID. But outside of that, just not a lot of hitchhiking. You just don't see it today. Haven't seen it really for many years.
Yeah, for a number of years. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I mean, number one, I don't know who doesn't know the dangers of hitchhiking at this point.
Yeah.
But you also have Uber. You have Lyft. You have services that can get you from point A to point B if you don't have a car. Now, you got to pay for them.
Like in my town, we have Elma's taxi service,
Sure.
She'll come around, she'll pick you up for half the cost, but it takes you twice as long to get where you need to be.
Yeah. There are a lot of options in 2020. But in 1970s America, we know hitchhiking was probably at its peak, and we know that it contributed to a number of disappearances, sexual assaults, and murders. Now, there are a lot of opponents against hitchhiking. You and I kind of rail on it, so we could be considered opponents.
Absolutely.
But there are some proponents for hitchhiking. There were probably many more back in the 70s, but there are some even today that say, you know what? It's very safe. And those things that you guys talk about, those were the extremes. Those are the outliers. Percentage-wise, the danger is less than 1%. And there are some statistics, some research. I don't know who did it, but there are some things that back that up. I still think, no matter what the statistics are, given what you and I have uncovered in our research, it's something to avoid if you can.
Yeah, I don't ever see me hitchhiking. I'll go ahead and just walk the distance.
Well, I don't see you hitchhiking because I don't think many people would pick you up.
It'd be the opposite.
Based on what you're wearing, you've got a huge K-bar hanging off of your hip.
Yeah.
They'll probably think, that's a little dangerous.
They wouldn't want me in the car because they know that I won't take my K-bar off. And I'm definitely not going to put my K-bar in their trunk. So.
But this case takes place in the 70s. And there were a lot of people unafraid to hitchhike. We know the victims that we're about ready to talk about were part of that group. The first victim of the Pasco County Four was 49-year-old Wilma Ida Woods. Now, Wilma by no means was a model citizen. She had put together a pretty substantial rap sheet in her 49 years. Gibbs, she had over 100 arrests and different charges in her 11-page file.
It's a pretty big file.
It is. It's also, hard to kind of talk bad about somebody that we know is a victim, but It is part of the story. In 1973 alone, she was jailed 10 different times for profanity, disorderly conduct. But I do believe that the majority of her arrests were for prostitution.
Well, she had a big file, but I just want to say my file is bigger. Is that the wrong thing to boast about?
Well, I think I don't think you should have file envy.
Is that?
Or record envy.
Okay. Well, mine are double-sided. How about that?
Now, Wilma worked at several of the strip clubs on Dale Mabry. She did some nude dancing, but she also worked as a barmaid. On December 29th, 1973, a man driving on State Route 577 near State Route 54 saw a nude woman's body lying behind a sand pile about 100 feet from the side of the road. The body was in some pine-studded fields next to some orange groves. When police arrived and examined the body, they noted that this woman was wearing only high heels. They also noted that it appeared as though her throat had been crushed. Police and the medical examiner were able to determine she had died the night before on the 28th by strangulation. According to investigators, Wilma's murder occurred just 24 days after her last arrest. Just 18 months later, on May 19th, 1975, the second victim of the Pasco County Four was found. 19-year-old Diana Lynn Vallack. Her body was found less than 3 miles away from where Wilma's body had been found, on an empty lot on State Route 54 and Livingston Road in an orange grove. It was actually an orange grove worker who found her body in a shallow grave. She was nude and her body showed a significant amount of decomposition. Near this shallow grave, police found some of Diana's jewelry, including her Zodiac cancer medallion necklace. The medical examiner noted that she had been shot in the head 13 times with a .22 caliber pistol. Diana worked at the Carrollwood Bottle Club on the Dale Mabry Strip as a nude dancer. She was last seen alive, hitchhiking to work around 7 p.m. on May 15th, when no one claimed her body. Diana was buried at a county cemetery with no headstone. Now, later, investigators learned that she was married to a sailor in the Navy who never returned home. They also later found her family, but the family told the sheriff just to let her lay in peace where she was.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, Gibbs, no headstone has ever been provided or put as a marker for her grave.
Makes me kind of sad to hear that.
It's sad. And I'm not saying her family didn't love her. I'm not saying anything like that.
Right.
But to find out that your loved one was murdered,
yeah,
buried in a county cemetery. Okay, first of all, you don't want to have her moved to maybe a family plot or next to other relatives. Okay, that's one thing. But then not to even want to put up even the most simple headstone.
Yeah.
I feel as though it's a little disrespectful, and it maybe kind of points to the fact that maybe she and the family had a falling out over the years. I don't know what else it could mean.
It happens a lot with families.
Sure.
But at this point, these orange groves have me a little concerned.
Well, obviously a common factor, right? 2 murders, both bodies found in orange groves. Now, there are quite a few orange groves in Florida. It's kind of known for that.
Right.
But the wheels start turning, right? If you're playing amateur detective, which I think a lot of our audience does.
Sure.
They know on these unsolved, they're going to be able to try to put their own pieces together. Okay, well, my first piece is the Dale Mabry Strip.
Yeah.
2 victims that both worked in the topless nude dancing industry.
Right.
And then you have both bodies being found in an orange grove.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means yet, but those are the pieces of the puzzle so far. Maybe it's a little too early to speculate because we should probably get through, talking about all the victims.
Right.
But I think some people are going to think, okay, is it an orange grove worker that likes to visit the strip on their time off, is familiar with the orange grove, and that's why they come back there?
Yeah, because when you think about Pasco County, it's the neighboring county to where the strip clubs are, right? So either someone's in Tampa, leaving Tampa to dump the bodies and go back, or someone's traveling to Tampa
and dumping the bodies closer to home. Yeah. I agree with that. The third victim of the Pasco County Four was 19-year-old Gail Foster. On September 28th, 1977, Gail's partially nude body was found within a 3-mile radius of the other 2 victims on an empty lot in an orange grove on Pasco Road and Sunny Drive, just north of State Route 54. The medical examiner placed her time of death the night before on the 27th. Gail had been shot in the head twice in the left temple with a .22 caliber pistol. She was last seen alive late in the afternoon on the 27th after her car broke down. She was hitchhiking in the city of Lutz, headed to her job on the Dale Mabry Strip. Gail was a topless dancer at the Godmother Lounge, and she had just moved to Tampa 3 weeks earlier from Memphis, Tennessee.
Can you imagine moving, trying to start a new life over, and just within three weeks, it's over? Someone decides to take your life, never getting the chance to see what your potential was going to be.
Yeah, Gibbs, she was only 19 years old. So, I mean, I think when you talk potential, when you think about, okay, what could she have done in the future, that's there.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go back to the reason why she's hitchhiking. She had a car. It broke down. She'd only been in Tampa for 3 weeks. So really, how many people did she know to call and say, hey, can you help me out? I need a ride to work.
Right.
There was no Uber. There was no Lyft. There was nothing like that. Now, there were taxis, but depending on her situation, maybe she felt like that was money that she just couldn't afford to spend, and she was going to take the chance that some nice person would give her a ride into town to where she worked.
Yeah, just thumb it on in.
So we have Orange Grove again. The other thing to point out is that the murder of Gail Foster occurred over 2 years after Diana Vallack was killed. But then it was less than a month later, after Gail was killed, that the fourth victim of the Pasco County Four, 39-year-old Emily Ellen Grieve, was murdered. Emily had just moved to the area in early October 1977 with her young child. She left for work on October 10th at the Interchange Motor Lodge near the Dale Mabry Strip. She ended up getting a ride from a young man, and she ended up having coffee with this guy at a local cafe across the street from where she worked before she started her shift. Emily told her coworkers she was excited to meet this young man at the Owl Lounge after her shift ended. This was a place just up the street, and they were going to meet and have a few drinks. So her shift ended, and she told her coworkers that she was headed to the Owl Lounge, and she joked that if they never saw her again, they would know why.
It's a bad joke.
Well, it's a bad joke knowing that this woman is going to lose her life. But in the moment, we all make little silly, stupid jokes like that, and you don't even give it a second thought. I know for a fact I've said something like that. Hey, I'm going over here. If I don't come back, you know what happened to me.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, maybe we shouldn't joke like that. But nobody thinks something like that is actually going to happen.
Well, that night, when she left that hotel to walk up to the Owl Lounge, was the last time she was seen alive.
On October 21st, 2 hunters stumbled across a partially nude female body on a vacant lot on State Route 54 and State Route 577. The body was behind a sand pile about 100 feet from the side of the road in some pine-studded fields next to the orange groves.
Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it?
It does, and it should, because it's basically the same location where the body of Wilma Woods was found in 1973.
Sounds like somebody likes a certain area.
Well, now that we've talked about all 4 victims, the clues become a little more important, because when you look at all 4 of these cases, the clues are so similar. The locations of where their bodies were found. The fact that at one point before they disappeared, they had all been on the strip.
Yeah.
So things start to come in focus even more because all 4 share some of these similar characteristics. The medical examiner determined that Emily's cause of death was due to a gunshot, and it was just one shot to the back of her head with a .22 caliber pistol. So again, .22 caliber is prevalent as we're talking about each victim.
Yeah, when you think 3 of the 4 were shot and killed with a .22 caliber handgun. You know, the very first victim was strangled, but that was 73. Then you had about an 18-month gap before the next victim was murdered.
So again, does that mean something? Does it not mean something? Does it mean that all 4 of these victims were killed by the same person and the perpetrator changed his method of murder after the very first kill? We don't know. But these are all questions to keep in the back of your mind. And one thing, Gibbs, that I found very interesting, these 2 hunters that found Emily's body discovered some more skeletal remains just a few months later near the very same spot. So they found the second set of remains on December 22nd of 1977. Those remains were identified as Terry Crew, a 26-year-old male who was last seen heading out to collect his winnings from the local dog track on November 1st. He was never seen alive again after that, but his van was found on an Orchard Grove lot. The farmer who found it moved the van to his barn, but never called anyone to say, hey, you know, I found this van. He just moved it into his barn and went on about his life.
So, hey, man, maybe I got a free van here.
Now, once he saw it on the news that some remains were found, they were identified, he recognized the name, Terry Crew, from some papers that he found inside the van. And then that's when he called authorities. Not sure what explanation he gave to them for why he waited so long, but Terry Crew was killed execution style, shot in the back of his head. Now, one thing that police found out about Terry was that he was an expert at karate.
Badass at karate.
And so part of their theory on why he was shot in the back of the head was that his killer knew this and knew that it would be a bad idea to be facing Terry and try to take him on.
Right.
Much easier, less chance of something going wrong to get behind him and surprise him with a shot to the head. Police also found out that Terry ran with a guy named Poochie, who was his bookie. I'm assuming Poochie was not his real name.
I hope not.
But
and if your name is Poochie out there, I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying.
It just sounds like a nickname.
Yeah.
But the thing about Poochie is after Terry's murder, nobody ever saw Poochie again.
No.
Now, we're not saying that Terry's murder or Poochie's disappearance is related in any way to the Pasco County Four, but it's interesting.
I think so. And the fact that one lot, 2 of the females were found, and then this Terry skeleton remains were found there.
Well, if you're going on the theory that the killer likes to dump bodies in a familiar place.
Right.
Well, then you can kind of expand on that and say, well, maybe this person killed Terry too.
Yeah.
And decided to dump his body in the same place. Or you could just have multiple killers running around and 2 different people thought this was a good place to dispose of a body.
But yeah, it just has that certain look to it.
So as we kind of circle back to the 4 Pasco County victims, all of their bodies were placed within a 3-mile radius. One of the victims was strangled to death, while the other 3 were killed with a .22 caliber gun, shot in the head. They were all either completely nude or semi-nude, and none of them had their purses with them, which we haven't mentioned yet, but I do think is important. Only one of the victims had her jewelry, and even then it was found near her and not on her. After the murder of Emily Grieve, the so-called Dale Mabry Strip murders stopped. Now, during the time period of the Pasco County 4 murders, there were other unsolved murders that investigators thought could possibly be connected with these 4, but those others were eventually solved. These 4 remain unsolved, and investigators have felt pretty much all along, Gibbs, that all 4 were killed by the same killer. So we have to talk about this, right? Maybe the killing stopped because a suspect was arrested, could have been arrested near there and just never linked to the murders, or arrested in another state, moved away.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that could come into play.
Maybe he was messing with the wrong person and he ended up being killed himself.
Or died of natural causes. Now, I mentioned maybe he moved. Maybe he moved and started killing women wherever he moved to. I think the one thing that is hard to believe is that a killer like this, if this is one person who killed these 4 women over a number of years,
Right.
that would make him a serial killer. And I'm assuming it's a man.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that a person like that would just stop cold turkey on their own.
I've had enough. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
I've had my share of killing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it anymore. Now, theoretically, could it happen? Sure. Based on the mountain of research that you and I have done on all these cases that we do,
Right.
it doesn't seem to be the case.
No.
Killers don't stop on their own. The rush, the high, whatever you want to call it, the compulsion of killing is too great. And eventually they're drawn back to it.
Yeah.
They need it. They want it. So to say that, in that way, it is kind of like a drug.
Well, sure.
And some people can stop a drug cold turkey. So that's why I say it's not impossible. It just doesn't seem like it happens very often. Now, maybe it does. And with those people, they're never caught. And that's why we don't know about it.
Yeah.
But
I think it's more that that person has been restricted either because he's sitting in jail.
and I would say restricted involuntarily,
Yes. There you go.
not of their own choosing.
Right.
Now, is it possible that someone was fairly young when they did this? They met a woman, they got married, they had kids and decided to stop. Maybe, maybe. We also know a lot of serial killers who have no problem continuing to kill right underneath the noses of their wife, their kids, their entire family. Mother-in-laws living in the house. They don't care.
No, they keep going.
So I guess for me, I can never say never, right? There's always outliers. There's always that exception to the rule. But I think by and large, most killers just don't stop on their own. They stop when they're stopped.
Right.
Or, like you said, when there's an involuntary restriction. I like that term. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about is while these murders were happening, over the number of years, you have the dancers, you have the sex workers, people that worked the Mabry Strip. They obviously had to be somewhat concerned, even scared. I also think it was pretty universally thought that there was one killer targeting these women. Now, on top of that, the community was outraged. And I think most of that outrage was directed at the police because they felt as though the Pasco sheriff should have asked for help from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. But the sheriff came out to the local press and said, we don't need state assistance. We have a 15-member task force with the best investigators from the Tri-County area working these cases. The problem is the task force was never able to really even generate any solid leads on these 4 victims, these cases. And obviously we know they weren't solved,
Right.
Haven't been solved.
And also when researching this case, you will find a lot of articles from dancers speaking out saying they just felt like the police didn't care.
Well, and you and I have done cases before involving sex workers, and I think that feeling comes across a lot where it's thought that police aren't maybe trying as hard because they look down on a certain population.
Right.
Or a certain section of society. And I think sometimes that bears out, right? It turns out to be true. I don't know that that's the case here, but I think to your point, that's what the feeling was among the dancers, the sex workers, the people that worked up and down the Dale Mabry Strip thought these people don't care about us.
Right.
And so how hard are they really trying to solve these cases? Now, there haven't been a lot of suspects or persons of interest named publicly over the years in these murders, but one name that has cropped up is the name Gerald Eugene Stano. Stano was born Paul Zinninger, but after his birth mother neglected and rejected him, he was put up for adoption at 6 months old, along with his 3 older siblings. But Stano wasn't a child that people wanted to adopt at the county home because he had a noticeable issue of eating his own feces.
Yeah, that's a bad way to start out an adoption.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that I think most people are going to want to try to tackle. That's going to be something you're going to have to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty. And how do you solve it? Can you solve it? What are the underlying issues? What's this kid been through?
More importantly, is that right there?
That's caused him to develop this habit. I think most people assume it resulted from his birth mother not feeding him. She neglected him. So most likely she probably didn't feed him
that much. Whatever he did eat, I guess he waited for it to come around.
And then at some point, it's theorized that maybe he just became accustomed to it. The psychologist at the county home also stated that Stano acted more like a dog in some respects than a human.
Well, I've seen dogs eat their own feces plenty of times. So
I'm not sure why you're just out watching dogs, but I get it. When you say plenty of times, it makes it sound like it's a hobby or something.
There goes Gibby, dog watching again.
One of the social workers at the home became attached to the young boy and eventually adopted him at 19 months old. Her name was Norma Stano, and she and her husband, Eugene, showered Gerald with love, but it proved to be too late.
The damage was already done?
It seems as though it was, because we know what happens later on. It seems as though this kid was on a collision course for some really bad things to happen down the road.
Yeah.
And he had some of the signs that other serial killers have had. Now, doesn't mean when you have these things that you're going to be a serial killer, but Stano was a bedwetter at the age of 10. He was bullied by both boys and girls at an early age. He was arrested twice at the age of 14, once for pulling the school's fire alarm, which induced a panic. They don't like that.
I don't see that being too bad, though. I think because I thought about pulling the alarm when I was a kid at one point. But then they told you, if you pull the alarm, you're going to get this fluorescent residue on your hand, and we'll know who did it. So I was like, I don't want that.
That's like the thing, if you pee in the pool, there's going to be this thing that comes around you, and everybody's going to know that you peed in the pool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as a kid, probably in middle school or whatever, most kids probably wouldn't think, okay, that's that big a deal.
Right.
Now, adults, people that work at the fire station, the principal, they think it's a real big deal.
Sure it is.
Because people panic when a fire alarm goes off and someone could get hurt.
Yeah, and you're taking them away from maybe a real emergency.
That's
elsewhere.
true too.
Yeah.
That's true too.
But as a kid, you don't think about that.
But then he also got arrested for throwing rocks off a bridge at cars as they came passing below. That's very dangerous.
Yeah, you can kill somebody that way.
And there were a number of car crashes. I don't know if anyone died as a result of his actions, but there definitely were car crashes. And that's something that has continued throughout the years. Every now and then I'll read a story about a kid throwing a rock, throwing a cinder block through somebody's window. I don't think that was all that long ago. I mean, you're talking about extremely dangerous stuff.
I think that's why in some areas you see the fence put up around the walkovers and things like that now.
So his adoptive parents, by all accounts, Gibbs, they really tried to help him, right? They tried to love him, take care of him. But after he started to get into all of this trouble, they enrolled him in a local military school. But even that didn't help. He's still living at home, but attending this military school, he started stealing money from his parents, and then he would pay other guys on the track team to let him win so that he would look like a winner.
What a loser. Really. If you got to pay somebody to let you win to look good. And that can never really work out anyway.
No, because people are going to tell. They're going to you're going to be exposed at some point, and they're going to have your money.
Yeah.
Stano was said to have been an average student. I mean, we're talking mostly D's. He didn't graduate until he was 21 years old. So obviously he was held back at least, 3 times at least?
Yeah.
He was known to be a compulsive liar to family, friends, even strangers. He just liked to lie. At the age of 21, he started his first job at a local hospital, but got fired for stealing money from his coworkers. During this time, he was living in his parents' basement. Stano later admitted in interviews that he first killed at the age of 18, but really ramped up in the 1970s after he moved to Florida. So obviously, this is where Stano comes into the Pasco County case. Now, we know Gerald moved to Florida with his parents in the early 1970s to care for his grandmother in Ormond Beach. And he had jobs from time to time. The problem is he could never keep a job because he would always get caught stealing.
It doesn't look good on a resume when you can't put anything down because you don't want them to call your previous employer.
You just always have no experience.
Yeah. I'm really good with money. That's what all he can say. I'm really good with money if you want to see it disappear.
But this is when his killing spree ramped up. In March of 1973, he stabbed 19-year-old Janine Ligatino and 17-year-old Ann Arsenault to death. Then 6 months later, he strangled 17-year-old Barbara Ann Bauer. Stano killed again on January 19th, 1974, when he strangled 17-year-old Kathy Lee Scharf. But according to his interviews, in 1975, he killed 6 more victims. And one of the victims he claims he murdered was Diana Vallack, the second of the Pasco County 4 victims that we talked about. So there's a definite reason for bringing Gerald Stano into this case. Not just the fact that he was a serial killer, not just the fact that we know he was in Florida and he killed a bunch of people.
Right.
He literally confessed to the murder of Diana Vallack.
Problem is the police couldn't prove that he did it.
No, they couldn't prove that anybody did it. And I think one of the issues that has been mentioned over the years was that when police interviewed him about the murder of Diana Vallack, he didn't know certain details about her murder that they felt he should have known if he really was the killer.
Right.
But he continued killing, that's for sure. He murdered 4 people in 1976. Up to this point, he had either strangled, stabbed, or shot his victims to death. He killed 8 more times between 1977 and 1980.
Well, eventually his luck's going to run out.
And it did in March of 1980 when he attempted to kill Donna Hensley, And this was a situation where Donna Hensley was a sex worker. Stano attempted to book something with her, but he refused to pay up front. So she wouldn't have sex with him.
Well, that didn't make him happy.
No. So he took out his knife, cut her thigh several times, tried to stab her in the chest, but she was able to escape. And Donna Hensley went straight to the police. She told them what had happened, what this guy looked like, but she also told them that he picked her up in a red gremlin. And she told them where, this hotel, and said, he still might be there. There were quite a few gremlins in 1970, sad to say.
Yeah.
The Gremlin was not one of the best cars ever made.
Yeah. But I'm sure a red gremlin probably stood out.
Well, and it did, right? So officers go to the hotel, not too hard to spot a red gremlin. The car itself kind of stands out, but a red gremlin is definitely going to.
Yeah.
So they pulled him over, and when they ran his ID, it came back that he had this pretty extensive rap sheet with a history of assault on sex workers. Stano was taken to the police station and questioned about the attack on Donna Hensley. He confessed to attacking Donna, but he didn't stop there. He decided to confess to the murder of another sex worker, Mary Carol Mayer, who he had stabbed in the chest many times after she rejected him. He signed a confession to her murder, was charged with first-degree murder, and put in jail. By 1981, Stano had confessed to 2 other murders, and that year, he was sentenced to life in prison. Gibbs, the guy was only 29 years old at that point.
Yeah, young guy.
To have racked up the number of murders that he did, and that he would later claim he did, because it's a big number, and we'll talk about it. After he was sentenced, he decided to confess to 3 other murders, but prosecutors didn't charge him for those. This upset him.
Yeah, he's pretty pissed off about it.
Yeah, he was mad that they didn't charge him for these 3, so he decided to confess to 15 murders, trying to get the attention of the prosecutors and the media. I mean, I think he wanted attention. He wanted everyone to know how big and bad he was.
Right.
Eventually, the state of Florida charged him for 2 of the additional murders. He pleaded guilty and waived his right to a trial. In 1983, he was sentenced, and this time he got the death penalty. And for some reason, they tried him for another murder several months after he got the death penalty. And this was a murder that he had denied, but the jury found him guilty anyway. And he got another death sentence. In 1986, Stano appealed his first death sentence and was granted a stay. Then in 1987, he appealed his second death sentence. But his execution was set for August 26th, 1987. Just days before he was set to be executed, he appealed again, stating ineffective assistance of counsel, and he was granted another stay.
Which is a pretty big reason for appeals.
Yeah, you see that one all the time.
Yeah.
So basically, this went on for the next year or so, right? He would appeal, he'd get a stay, but then his luck ran out and they set his final execution date for May 30th, 1997. So over these years that he was appealing his sentences, a true crime book called Blind Fury was published. This happened in 1993. It was about Stano's life and crimes, and it was ghostwritten by the mother of an assistant state attorney who prosecuted Stano.
Seems like that should be a conflict of interest, or like there should be some type of ethics around that.
Well, maybe that's why it was ghostwritten. And she didn't want her name out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. While this guy sat on death row, he just continued to confess to more murders eventually bringing his total to 41. And then right before his execution date, another death row inmate was in the electric chair when it malfunctioned. That's usually not good.
That's not good. I really don't feel bad for that person because obviously he deserved to meet his fate.
Or you're assuming he did.
Well, that's true. In today's world, you just don't know anymore.
Yeah, you're assuming it did. But I'm thinking Green Mile in my head.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But because of that, they had to push back Gerald's execution to March 23rd, 1998. And that's the day that he was finally executed. But right before it happened, I mean, basically in his final statements, he said he was innocent. He was coerced into making all of his confessions. And he recanted everything, basically.
Yeah.
Including the murder of Diana Vallack. There have been a lot of investigators, criminal experts who have studied Stano. Many have written about him as a serial killer, but many have looked into his interviews and have seen where Stano was fed some of the details to many of the cases that he confessed to, which is not what you want, right? You want the person to give you the details.
Right.
That's kind of what we see in a lot of these wrongful convictions. People are fed, and then they regurgitate it back and it's bam, there's a confession.
No doubt he was a bad guy.
And there's no doubt that he was a killer.
Right.
Now, I think what is in doubt is the number of people he killed. Is it 41? Doubtful. I think many people doubt that. It could be, as we always say, it could be higher. We don't know.
Sure, yeah.
But when it comes to the Pasco County Four, I think that's where, it's really important to the case that we're talking about, especially Diana Vallack. Right? He didn't confess to any of the other three.
No, but I think because he confessed to hers, the assumption was made because the other three were so similar, he had to be the guy that did that too.
Because the thought was all four were killed by the same person.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
The problem is if he was fed the details of Diana's murder.
Right.
And we talked about it, right? When they interviewed him, he was short on details that they thought he should have known.
Exactly.
So they, some people could have fed him some details. When Pasco investigators talked to him, they may not have fed him anything, and he couldn't tell them what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Or what they thought they should hear. I should rephrase that. So because of that, I mean, at least as far as those folks go, they don't believe he had anything to do with any of the Pasco County Four murders. And all four are still considered unsolved, according to the Pasco County Sheriff's Department. Just last year, a local Florida University criminology class set out to review the cold cases of the Pasco County Four and put them up against the files on Gerald Stano. Gibbs, a number of years have passed.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Since the murders, but even since Stano confessed and then recanted and was put to death, that was quite a while ago. So this class, they wanted to use some of the new technology that was available now, but wasn't available back in the day. And from what I can understand, they are getting some cooperation from Pasco County. So I think the hope here, and we don't really know where this stands because it's kind of hard to find information on how far they've gotten or what the results have been. But I think the hope is that some of the DNA that remains in these cases can be processed and checked against databases.
Yeah.
Maybe they can go down the genealogy track that has solved some cases recently. The other problem I think, Gibbs, that we encountered in researching this case, I don't think Pasco County's been real forthcoming with that type of information, right? So we don't really know what DNA exists, what type of samples they've been able to get, and what type of checks they've done already as far as databases. And obviously my assumption is whatever they've done, they haven't hit on anything.
Right.
Because if so, that would be news, because most likely there would be arrests and all that. But I think, as happens with all of these older unsolved cases, investigators have so many obstacles, whether it's the fact that the reports are old, some of them are lost, evidence has degraded or in some cases been lost.
Definitely a problem in these older cases.
And you always have witnesses, suspects. When it comes to witnesses, their memories fade, they die.
Yeah.
Same with suspects. They've had time to maybe create a better alibi than what they had back then.
Yeah.
Or because the case is so old, people die off. I mean, it just happens.
Definitely harder cases to try to move along in the system.
Yeah, I think as an investigator, you'd rather be working on a 5-year-old case than a 50-year-old case. I mean,
certainly.
It's just going to be easier. Not that you're going to solve either one necessarily, but one thing detectives have been pretty consistent about is that there's still a strong commitment to solve these cases, these 4 Pasco County cases. But that's it for the unsolved murders of the Pasco County Four. Gibbs, I don't know where my hope lies or how hopeful I am or how not hopeful. I'm hopeful that it gets solved.
Well, sure. Yeah, both of us are.
I don't know how confident I am or where my confidence level lies. That's what I should have said. We're going on 45 years, getting close to 50.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the very first murder. 47 years. That is a very long time.
It's very difficult to solve those.
So to put it in perspective, the first murder happened the year I was born.
Yeah.
And I feel old as you know what.
Well, you look older.
And I look even older.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name's Lucy. I'm from Perth, Western Australia. I've been listening to you guys for the last couple of years. My mum passed away at that time, and you guys really kept me going through a rough patch. And then earlier this year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and again, you guys just keep turning it on. So thank you very much. I love the banter, like everyone says, but you guys are awesome. I mean, I'm addicted to true crime. You're full of information. You're entertaining. So, yeah, thank you very, very much. Keep your head on the swivel and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
So thank you for the voicemail. Obviously sad that you had to go through and are going through. Sad to hear about the passing of your mother. And I know how tough breast cancer is.
Yeah, both you and I both have.
Oh, I should have said that. Yeah, we both do. But I will say this. The members of my family that have gone through it, it was rough as hell, but they came through.
Yeah.
And so you got to stay positive. Absolutely positive. And Gibby and I will be here.
Absolutely, we will.
Doing this little part that we do to help you out. Gibbs, I want to go to Perth.
Want to go to Perth?
Yeah, I just want to walk around. I want to hear the accents.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to make that. Let's put that on our bucket list.
How long's that flight?
Too long. I got to do it in stages, man. I can't be cooped up on an airplane. Is there one where I do some hops?
Yeah. You're like, we need to fly here. And they're like, we don't fly there, sir. There's no airport
fly to the
there.
East Coast. Stop there. Fly across the pond. Stop there.
I think you're going the wrong direction.
Oh, I am, right? It's closer to go the other way.
If you want to go that way, I'll meet you there then. So,
all right, I'll fly to California. Stop there.
There you go.
Hey there, Mike and Gibby. I'm just out here with my Kaiser blade. Some people call it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade. I just want to tell you, I ain't going to have to whoop you upside the head with it. I like your podcast, with the solved and the unsolved. So that don't make me mad. So I guess it's going to be all right. I'm going to go on now and give me some of them French fried potatoes. Maybe go out and chop some wood with my kaiser blade. Some people call it a sling blade. I call it a kaiser blade. All right, well, now, you keep your own time ticking. All right, then. Bye.
So you know me, Gibbs. I can't pass up a good sling blade impression. So the best part of it is, right, he's doing the impression, says he loves the podcast, but in the voice is saying, hey, stay safe and keep your own time ticking. That's the part that actually cracked me up. I think I've made mention of it before. I've seen that movie. I can't tell you how many times. And if it comes on or if I'm flipping through the channels, I'll probably watch the rest of it from wherever it is. There's something about that movie. Now, there's a lot of people that don't like it. I think it's one of those movies you either really like or you can't stand. But for me, it's just one that, I think the acting's really good. The story's good.
Billy did good, huh?
Well, the one thing you can say is he went all out.
Yeah.
He didn't hold nothing back.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to be on his good side.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, this is Brandy from Jamestown, New York. Just want to say I love your podcast. I started listening a few months ago and I just caught up, so now I'm listening to Unsolved. You guys get me through my workday because it can be pretty boring. I had a suggestion for you guys. It's the case of Marjorie Steele Armstrong and the pizza bomber. It was in Erie, PA back in 2003. She coerced a pizza guy named Brian Wells to rob a bank with a bomb collar on his neck, and the bomb went off while police had him cuffed in a parking lot. It was a pretty crazy case. Anyway, I'm Team Mike because I can't choose just one of you. Have a good day, guys. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Yeah, I remember that case.
Yeah. Now, there's a
Netflix
show on it, and we were actually set to do it. I think it was either last year or maybe the year before. I can't remember what year it was.
Right.
Maybe last year. And I thought I had the guy who did the documentary, the guy that was, conversing with Marjorie.
Right.
I thought I had him set to come on.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's going to be great. We're going to do this episode, and it fell through.
Yeah.
So I still have the episode queued to do sometime in the future because it is a fascinating case.
Yeah. And it would involve the bank that I work at.
That I used to work at.
That you used to work at. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Hi, my name's Aretha. I just listened to True Crime All the Time Unsolved for August 10th, and I just had a thought about it that because she was dating a cop and the missing persons report, both of them weren't filed. I wonder if the cop had anything to do with it, and it was just kind of swept under the rug for that reason. If it was kind of an inside job or whatever. Just a thought. I've never left a voicemail before, but I just had to put that out there. You guys are great. I've been listening to you guys for a few years. Love your podcast. And stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
So she's talking about Carrie May Parker.
Yes.
And that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory, and you and I didn't really explore it. I think where my issues lie is that police officer didn't work with the group that was originally supposed to file it. So I don't know how much influence he could have had in that first part. Now, maybe later down the road when they went to another area, maybe he could have had some influence there, but I don't know. I don't put nothing past anyone at this point. That's the way I feel.
That's exactly how you
I'm not
feel.
accusing anyone, but I'm not discounting any theories either.
You still think I ate your fries at dinner time.
I think you
I
did
didn't
too.
touch them.
I looked away for like just a few seconds and half of them were gone.
I didn't eat them.
And I look over and 15 of them were sticking out of your mouth. What am I supposed to think?
I don't know, but it wasn't me.
All right. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.